Boop. All right. So, my friends, today the topic we're going to be covering is suicide assessment, um, management, what is the practices protocol around dealing with um, suicidality and within the IFRS framework that we've been talking about, right? Like suicidal parts, protectors that are, and this is a radical view on IFS, um, the parts of a person that are trying to help the client in this very extreme way, right? We won't go into the IFS side of this today. I want to just go through the mainline protocol, more or less talk about how I would like everybody to approach suicidality in the practice. If there are questions, if there are comments, if anybody wants to raise their hand, please do so. Like, feel free to interrupt me while I'm going through this. The main thing I want you all to know is, of course, we are mandated reporters in New York State as therapists, therapists in training, interns, licensed therapists. We are bound by law to prevent a tragedy from happening, and that means that we are bound to report or to engage emergency services if we have reason to believe that a person is going to it's at harm of killing themselves. Now, this duty, similar to the duty to report abuse of a child or an elder that's in a parent guardian relationship, very important distinction. It's only when there's an identified child and or elder in a guardian caretaking relationship. We're going to do a different talk about this in terms of reporting abuse. But that brings up a lot of parts in therapists that can get really, really activated when a client starts to maybe demonstrate or show us in a session based on their use of language, or just straight up is telling us in different ways that they are having suicidal ideation, or perhaps that they are thinking about killing themselves. The rule of thumb for all of us, this is what I would like to invite you to do, is to always err on the side of compassion, curiosity, transparency, and care. So transparency is important in this because we want to make sure all of our clients know that we are mandated reporters, that we, have this duty to protect them. What are their bounds of their confidentiality? And we go over this in the paperwork that all of the clients fill in when they come into the practice. They sign a confidentiality agreement in which it's clearly stated what the bounds of confidentiality are. And this is one of the reasons why every client coming into the practice needs to sign these paperwork before they get to work with you, because it's a part of covering everybody's um, understanding of these limits, as well as informed consent and the intake form and all that stuff. But it's good practice in the first session to be able to mention to the client, right? I usually ask them, have you ever been to therapy before we dive in? Yes, I've been to therapy and so on. It might be peppered in, as you're letting the client sort of come in with whatever they're coming in. Um, but at some point, I might say something like, I just want to remind you that, like, small legal disclaimer in New York State, this is my role. Everything that we discuss here is going to be completely confidential, except for these instances. And I might even add, this is important, that it is it is very different. I might find a way to say this, that the duty to report is only in very, very extreme cases where both intent and ideation and plan is present. I am not going to get you hospitalized or break your confidentiality or be reactive and get you admitted inpatient because you told me that you are thinking that you don't want to wake up anymore in the morning, right? Like I often tell them that I've been doing this for 15 years or so, and not once have I had to admit somebody over suicidal ideation or suicidality and stuff like that. It's very rare in our case, and we're going to hope that this remains. This is to say, please, if you are having these thoughts, if you're going through this, I want you to feel like this is a safe space to discuss anything and everything. Because oftentimes, especially clients who have had previous hospitalizations or previous suicidal behavior and so on, have been traumatized by the system, or maybe a reactive therapist that decided to break up with them, that decided to discontinue care, refer them out, like, we cannot work with you, this is too much for me, when they've disclosed that there is suicidal ideation or something like this. Does this make sense to you all? So the general principle and philosophy I want to make sure that we are promoting here is that suicidal parts are welcome to come into the session, that they can talk to us, that they can tell us what's going on, that we are going to make space for them. We're not going to refer them out immediately. We're not going to immediately react and ask them to, be medicated or necessary, right? Like we're not going to be reactive to them necessarily, but that we are going to take very concrete steps to promote the safety of the system. And there are ways in which we can do that, and that's why I wanted to share all of this with you all with the suicide assessment that we're going to be using and the suicide protocol, and then there's also a suicide safety plan. All of those three things, we're not going to be able to cover all of it today, but we're going to start with however far we can get, and then next week we'll come back to it, okay? Um, I'm going to keep going. Again, if anybody has a really burning question, I'm probably going to be answering some of this as I present this, but if anybody has a really burning question, um, just let me know. So, how do we assess for severity of suicidality? In very simple terms, and I'm going to refer to a document, a particular scale that we can use, but in very simple terms, before I share my screen to show it to you, it has to do with, okay, are there thoughts? Is there a part in there that's active? Are there thoughts about not being here, not being alive? Like not wanting to be here, this being too much, and something like that. If that's the case, if that's a yes, we can say there is suicidal ideation in some way, shape, or form, right? And that could even be an intrusive thought. Very important to distinguish. Sometimes a person might have an intrusive thought that they want to die, which means their own relationship to that thought is that they're scared about it. They don't want to have it. They don't like that they're having it. They're not entertaining it. This feels like it's an intrusive thought. And you get it a lot sometimes with OCD patients or patients who are like really have a particular relationship between a very strong manager part that's very protective in the system. We can think of this as a protective factor. We're going to go over this. And a firefighter that is throwing it out there like, maybe we could just like not be here or jump in front of a train or something like that. That could be really scary for somebody this has never happened to them. And this would be sort of intrusive suicidal ideation met with just a repulsion of the thought, like this is not mine, like I don't want to have this, I don't know why I'm having this, but it counts as ideation. The same as anybody that's saying, I don't know, somebody that might say like, I don't know how to go on anymore. It's just been so much. Like, especially when you're dealing with really heavy depressive symptoms, depression symptoms, of hopelessness, of helplessness. Um, if there's even a hint of, I don't know if I can go on anymore, sometimes I just really can't do this anymore, like this type of thing, you're getting a little bit of a hint of potential suicidal ideation. We want to be curious about this. The first step is just to really keep your eyes, your mind open, your heart open to noticing it. Also, if in doubt, we ask, obviously. Like, especially if somebody is saying, it's really heavy, I just don't know how I can go on anymore. They might not be alluding to it, like, they might not be saying it directly, but there's a lot in the language that is being shared that the person is at a limit or something like that. We would like to be able to approach that and just say something like, does it ever get so bad that you think that you might want to hurt yourself in some way or kill yourself? When in doubt, we ask directly, right? We could straight up ask if you're thinking, um, and a lot of times that's going to start the conversation. So, in simple terms, suicidal ideation can be present, and we're going to engage with it in a particular way, and we're going to find out whether there is intent or a plan. So, if there is ideation present, we want to understand, have you thought about how you're going to do this? Like, have you, in the ideation and the images and the fantasizing and the thinking about it and the contemplating, are you actually thinking about how this might happen? Want to understand what that might be. And then this way you're assessing for whether or not there's a plan, even if it's a vague plan, which will give us another level. We're going to see this in the assessment. Um, and we're also asking for intent, right? Like, do you want to carry this out? Do you think you want to carry this out? Like, how likely is it that you're going to carry this out? We're trying to assess for intent. Um, so those are the three big things, right? Like ideation, plan, and intent. And we're also going to assess for protective factors and for risk factors, which we'll talk about. But before we do that, I'm going to show you this assessment. This is the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. Does anybody know about this scale? Have they used it before? Good, Maya. So I'm gonna show it to you. I'm gonna share my screen so you can see it. This is the scale that we're gonna use. Now, just before we do that, I want to tell you that we, as part of the protocol, we are gonna do a safety plan, a suicide safety and suicide prevention safety plan for anyone that has suicidal ideation and a plan. Okay, right? So we are going to do this for anybody that has ideation and a plan, even if it's vague and if there's no intent, we're going to do this. Um, so that is going to be when we engage the suicide safety plan. This means we're going to direct all of our attention to create that safety plan, even if that disclosure comes at the end of the session. You have to stay with that person. That's an emergency assessment plan that you're doing, even if you need to cancel your next meeting. Okay? So it happens when there's plan, and suicidal ideation, even if there's no intent or a specified, also if there's not a specified plan and there's intent. So if you have suicidal ideation and intent, certainly we're going to do a safety plan. If we have suicidal ideation and a plan, we're going to do a safety plan. Um, Regardless. Does this make sense? So two need to be present. What I'm trying to drive home is we do not do a safety plan if somebody is having suicidal ideation only. And when you ask them a question whether they have a plan or they have some sort of, if they have intent, if they say, no, 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 I'm not in danger, or like, no, I wouldn't carry it out. Like, I would never do that. I'm just like been really thinking about this. We do not engage the safety plan. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's the scale we're going to be using. I'm going to send all of these documents to the whole practice. Um, Share screen options. Let's see. Okay, sorry. Keeping an eye on the time here. Okay, so does everybody see this? My screen is sharing well. Okay, so this is our Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. Remember, if you end up using this, it's good to document everything regarding suicidality, suicidal ideation, suicidal plan, intent. You're documenting everything. This is very important, right? In your notes, client, that's why we have that section in our notes every time. Suicidal ideation present, but it's intrusive, or there's no intent, there's no plan, you know? We use the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. The client's risk is very mild. You see how the colors are low risk, moderate risk, and high risk. The assessment that I'm showing you here, let me zoom out so you can see the whole document. It essentially identifies three different very concrete levels of risk: low risk, moderate risk, and high risk. So, um, as you can see, the questions that are in bold, like, do you have you wished you were dead or wished you could go to sleep and not wake up? That's the question that we ask. Have you wished you were dead or wished you could go to sleep and not wake up? You don't have to use every single word, but like as I just was role playing earlier, I might say to a client, like, does it ever get so bad that you think about not being here anymore? Example, maybe that you were dead or that you would go to bed and not wake up anymore. Could be, doesn't need to be verbatim, but that's essentially what we're trying to ask. Okay, so if that's a yes, that puts them at the low risk, right? That's still clear yellow. Um, Suicidal thoughts, right? General, non-specific thoughts about wanting to end one's life, die by suicide. I've thought about killing myself without general thoughts or ways to kill oneself, associated methods, intent, or plan. So, like, these are just, have you had any thoughts of killing yourself? This is just, has it actually even come up? So, if yes to question number two, like if they say no, have you actually thought of killing yourself? No, it's just like I wish I was dead. I wish I wasn't waking up, but I actually haven't thought that I would kill myself. Okay, so then you don't go to the next questions. If they say yes to number two, then you are going on with your assessment, right? Suicidal thoughts with method, without a specific plan or intent. Notice here we are in moderate risk. There are suicidal thoughts with a particular method. It's not a plan, it's a method. The person endorses the thoughts of suicide and has a thought of at least one method during the assessment period. This is different than specific plan with time, place, or method details work out. Does this make sense to you all? If somebody tells you that they had a thought and they were at the train station and they had a vague thought that, oh my God, I was going to jump in front of a train and I was really scared, that is a method. That is not like I am going to go and I'm going to do this on this day, and I'm going to write a suicide note, and I'm going to procure the things. That is a plan. A method could be that the suicidal ideation is accompanied with a specific way of doing it. That like a person might have an image of them, cutting their wrists, or they might have an image of them jumping out of window, anything like that, right? So, um, this is the question that we ask to assess for that. Have you been thinking about how you might do it? That's going to reveal if there is a method or not. Okay, everybody following? And then these 4, 5, and 6 are questions, remember, we are going to ask regardless, right? We're just going to ask all of these questions, right? Have you had these thoughts and had some intention of acting on them? This is where we are going to assess for intent. Have intention of acting on it, right? This is where we're ruling out, I've had the thoughts, but I definitely will not do anything about them, okay? Number 5, have you started to work out or worked out the details of how to kill yourself, and do you intend to carry out this plan? So this is where we are asking about whether there's a specific plan with the details of time and place and procuring the method and so on. Have you done anything, started to do anything, or prepared to do anything to end your life, right? This is a little bit of a tricky one, but just read this out, right? Have you started collecting pills? Have you obtained a gun? Have you given away your valuables? Wrote a will or a suicide note? Took out pills but didn't swallow any? Held a gun but changed your mind? Or it was grabbed from your hand? Went to the roof but didn't jump? Or actually took pills? Try to shoot yourself, cut yourself, try to hang yourself. Um, this is actual behavior that is moving towards doing this. Okay, we're trying to assess whether they've actually started doing something or not, right? So if there's a yes to any of these questions, that's gonna put us in high risk. We definitely want to have a suicide plan, a safety plan, a prevention plan, um, and without a specific plan or intent to act, I might not engage a safety plan just yet. It's a clinical judgment question on the orange, right? Depending on how it is, especially if there's not a plan, there's not intent, I'm not going to do it. If there is intent, I could do that. I mean, if there's a question, if there's a doubt in the person's mind, right? Like, I'm not sure I might, maybe sometimes I do feel like maybe I do want to, we're doing a safety plan. Make sense? Even if there's a slight bit of a question, if the person cannot tell you, I've thought of it, but like I would never go through it. Like you get like a strong sort of resolute. I'm not like that's not really in the cards. Then we can approach this more. Again, continue to check with the part. We're going to talk about the IFS framework of this in a different session, but we're continuing to approach this with curiosity, with compassion, which, by the way, that's not going to change if the person is high risk. The approaching this with curiosity, with compassion, befriending the suicidal part, all of that stuff is not going to change on an IFS framework. But the difference is we're going to be engaging on the safety plan. Okay? Does this make sense, y'all? Okay. So I'm going to share this document with you. Of course, we're documenting this in your session notes when this happens. I want to make sure that nobody's in the waiting room. Okay, good. Um, I'm going to show you the safety plan right now, okay? So that we can actually look at what it looks like and what we do when you do engage it. Before that, anybody has a question about this?
Um, I want to bring up it's sort of an unusual circumstances,
Hmm.
and we probably won't see it, but if we do have somebody that is considering assisted suicide, um,
Hmm.
I'm not quite sure if it's legal in New York. It might probably not, but
It is not,
it
no.
is, if somebody has a chronic disease, or they might be planning to go to Vermont or some other, or Oregon or a state that
Mm.
it is legal. Um, it's sort of it's
That is a
if they have a
wonderful, wonderful question. That is a really deep question, and it probably brings up a lot of parts in a lot of the therapists here present. I know it brings up a lot of parts for me.
yeah,
Um, and it's very, very complicated. I would probably, in this case, unless this is a case where there is chronic unbearable pain, I'm
yeah,
talking about me, myself, okay? This is not protocol, and I haven't designed a protocol on what to do when somebody wants to do assisted suicide. I would probably not be able to work with this client um, if they had intent and a plan and were going to carry out assisted suicide. Um, would probably
and why
refer
is
them
that?
out because I have too many parts around it that would be blended for me to be able to work with them effectively. Of course, I would if, as I said, if the client has um, ALS, neurodegenerative disease, something that is excruciatingly painful and stuff like that, I would probably, and this is again a part of me talking, and I would probably approach this. I would use the IFS model to approach these parts. And my conceptualization of this just gets really, 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 really messy because by default, I'm thinking that there's always a way to improve their situation. Um,
Yeah.
does that make sense? So I was
It makes
reading.
sense. Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking, I'm going to share just a little bit. Like for me,
Hmm.
in these circumstances, the thing is, for me, I personally believe that it is within a person's right, if they are
Yes, yes.
suffering, and
Hmm.
in that instance,
Hmm.
if they have an terminal disease, or even if they know they're going to die, but they're in good health now. I don't know. I mean,
Hmm.
so
Yes,
I have like my own counter transference around this, and
yes.
in one way, I believe that it could be a really healing experience as therapy, in the therapeutic space to
Hmm.
knowingly process the end of one's life, and to be present for that process leading towards death. Um, so yes, I mean, so and it's in some ways like I personally support it. So I'm wondering like how would that,
I agree
but
yeah.
legally we are bound to, to this other thing. So I know it's very complicated. Everyone has very different
Yes,
feelings around this.
yes,
Um,
yes.
I mean, like I said, we're probably not going to see this, but who knows?
It's a
Death
beautiful
is complicated.
discussion that we should come back to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, maybe too much for today.
it's a little bit it is a much longer discussion, a richer discussion. I
Yeah.
do think there's so many layers to it around the legality,
Yeah.
and it really goes over my head a little bit, particularly in how it goes in the state of New York and what to do. I would
Hmm.
have to research what the board is saying about this, what our ethical board is saying about this. We need to,
Hmm.
especially and it's a wonderful question, Maya. I really, really, really like that you brought it up because I mean, of course, as you can see, I'm super activated by it because I heard story. I read an article recently of a pretty young person that went to assisted suicide because they were really depressed somewhere in
Hmm.
Sweden or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and somewhere in that story, I was so blended with this really reactive part because at some point a psychiatrist told them that there was nothing that could be done for them, that they were beyond help. Like there was some medical professional that essentially, um,
Definitely okay.
and of course, I absolutely agree with you that it is within a person's right to carry on their agency and their will. But I would just be very, very careful, particularly within an IFS framework, that the person is not fully blended with a suicidal part that's actually taking away the agency of other parts.
Yeah.
So this would
No,
have to be
mm,
a very delicate, long throw. Like I certainly would, yeah, it's just a
yeah.
complicated topic for sure.
Yeah. I mean, this is like a specific circumstance. And I think we try
Mhm.
to prevent suicide because we know that people do, if they are able to avoid it, they do go on to live fulfilling, happy lives. I mean, that's essentially the point. What? Because we know that people can heal, people
Yes,
can,
yes,
move
yes.
on from this. And it's not,
Hmm.
I mean, I've had different thoughts at different times. Like, why shouldn't a person be able to decide this? This is like within their autonomy, but then after realizing that people, if they do not, like there's studies around this, they are able to go on. And so that is why
Right,
we do
right.
this. Because it,
Yeah,
it was a question for me, like, who are we to say, in some ways.
yes,
And so I had
yes.
these different thoughts around it at some point.
It's a
And
great, great question, Maya. And something I'm gonna do more research on so that I can give you a better answer next time. Um, and certainly, such a good discussion to have, and what it brings out on all of us, right? In your own systems, like to check in within your own system, like what are the parts that are activated. I know I'm super blended when I'm engaging this conversation in this moment. So,
Mhm.
Tanila, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes. So, because we're just talking about like other kinds of things that are similar in this space, not that it's directly correlated, but I was thinking as Maya was speaking about like homicidality as well. I know it's not specifically suicide, but I feel like there isn't a lot of discussion around that stuff either. And I was just like, I wanted to sprinkle it in here and say, maybe one day we could like talk about how to manage like homicidal clients. Because I know the first time that I dealt with one, I had no idea what to do. And that was way more scarier than like a suicidal. Not to say it's more common, but like in comparison, there's way more suicidality that is being spoken about as opposed to homicidality. And so I just wanted to share, like maybe at some point we could talk about that as well and how to navigate those kinds of situations.
Yes, yes, very good. I appreciate you bringing that up. We should do a separate conversation focusing on homicidality, hopefully soon, right? Like, let's not, um, as you said, in the spirit of not um, repeating this generalized pattern. I think you're right. So many more people are talking about suicidality in the therapy space, um, than homicidality, and it is really scary to deal with it. I completely agree. I would probably say, just as a, like in a nutshell, what I'm thinking about it is that the assessment is going to be very similar to a suicide assessment, right? We're managing whether there's ideation and if there's a fantasy, and if that is the case, if there's actual intent or plan to do it. For most clients, it stops at the ideation. Um, And for most clients that are actually intending and planning to do it, they will likely not disclose it to you in therapy. Most of them, right? Because they know as a mandated report, like the 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 limits of confidentiality would trigger, and it's just so much more even socially reprimanded that odds are it's going to stop at I'm no, I would not do that. Like, but I just really want to like shake them and like or whatever it is. Um, but if there is intent and so on, that's a whole different conversation. And maybe you can share with us when that when that comes up. Um, how you dealt with it, and I'll share with you what are some cases that I've dealt with homicidality. But generally speaking, I want us to approach these parts of our clients that are either homicidal or suicidal with a lot of curiosity and compassion and try to find out more about their degree of their intent, about the degree of their plan. If they're specific plans, remember not the method, but the plan. Anaya, go ahead. You have your hand raised?
Yes,
Go
these
ahead.
are all really great. So I was wondering, I guess, would we document this in the note very clearly if they have an intent, like a homicidal intent, but not necessarily a plan? Would we explicitly outline it yet?
Well, that is a very good question. If there is homicidal intent with a very specific person, I believe we are bound to report that and to break confidentiality. So if they're telling you, I really want to kill my boss, like they've destroyed my life, they've done all of this stuff, and you're exploring this, and there is intent to kill them, like, would you actually carry it out? And they tell you, yes, I would carry it out. I think that some sort of confidentiality bound is going to be broken. This is escaping me in this moment because I don't know if the actual plan needs to be present, but my gut, and I could be wrong about this, is telling me that you would probably have to engage or escalate the probably if there's no plan. I'm pausing about this. Let's come back to that, Anaya, because I don't know if there's no, I'm pretty sure, obviously, if somebody's telling you, I'm gonna kill this person and I'm gonna do it today or in this day and stuff like that, you have to report it, right? But the question is, do 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 we re you definitely document it. I'm sorry that I didn't clarify that. You document everything on your notes. With homicidality and suicidality, you document everything and anything, very detailed in your notes. The question I think I started jumping into is whether we have to report this to the authorities or break confidentiality or escalate care, right? And now in the case of homicidal ideation, um, in the cases that I've worked with have been under psychosis and a bunch of stuff with like certainly inpatient care is required or needed. But I don't know in the case of a client, like whether or not they would be willingly going into, um, like if you would have to engage the authorities at a higher level. So like I'm this person's mental health counselor, they've identified that they want to kill this particular person. I am concerned. So I'm going to research that a little bit if there's not an actual plan. Does that make sense,
Yeah,
Anaya?
thank you.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
so sorry that I don't have like
Oh,
the most clear answers. I also don't want to misinform you about these things. Um, go
very
ahead,
challenging
Maria.
question.
Um, so how does this change or differ whether we are in person or on Zoom? I mean, a lot of us are on Zoom a lot.
Hmm.
And if we need to escalate, if we
Hmm.
need to call 911,
Hmm.
we don't necessarily know where these people are.
Well,
I mean, we could tell them their name,
you
that they live
have
in New York.
yes, you have an emergency contact sheet that every client fills out as part of the intake paperwork.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. So this is part of it's part of why it's
I see. I
important that
didn't know
we
that.
have the intake
Okay.
paperwork, right? So
Hmm.
we have their address. It's also tricky because this is also why you want to know where your clients are signing in from. Like if you want to be really, really meticulous about how we do this ethically and well, we have to, if we're doing a telehealth session, it's like, oh, that's a different background. Where are you today? Can the client lie to you? Yes, they can. But
Hmm.
this is the thing. We are not God. We cannot prevent tragedies from happening that are going to happen. So if a
Mm.
person is already thinking about doing this, I mean, this is stuff that we need to deal with as counselors, is where are the limits of what we can do and deal with that. So we're going to do what we can in the event that somebody, for example, Maya, you're seeing somebody remotely and they've told you, like, I'm thanking you for your service. I don't think this is working. I'm gonna carry this plan out today, and you don't know where the client is, you're gonna just do whatever you can to reach the emergency contacts, the local authorities of that place. If this is the first time that they just disclosed that, again, we're talking about like a lot of hypotheticals that are not necessarily concrete, and you're gonna document that in your notes. Another key takeaway about today, you document everything. We talked about this, client was on telehealth, we reported this, counselor provided suicidal assessment plan. We're going to go through a bigger document that has the protocol of what all of the steps you need to do and all of the things you're going to want to document for this. So this is so that you can prove in the event of an investigation. I was just counseling and consulting with a phenomenal therapist. She's actually the one who helped me devise this suicidal assessment protocol, the protocol that we're going to see, not the plan, who was an investigator for the state on suicides. So she knows very well these cases. And from the side of the state that's looking into this, and a lot of the points that she was driving home is like, Juan, in any case, if there's an audit, if there's anybody coming after you, if you sit in front of an attorney in a courtroom and they ask you, how far back was this person having this suicidal ideation? When did you first know, whatever it is? And you say it anecdotally, but there's no written proof in your notes that you knew at this time that this started, it didn't happen. Okay, so I want to make sure that everybody is very clear that, of course, we're thinking about client safety, clients' well-being, being transparent, fulfilling our role as mental health counselors and our obligations in New York State under this, mandate as reporters, as mental health therapists. This can be really tricky. Um, but we're also trying to cover our own butts as professionals to make sure that we're doing everything in the way that is going to protect us from potential liability. Does this make sense? Cinderella, go ahead.
Yeah, so about the note-taking piece, how long would you recommend for us to like leave that there was like a history or that there is like, I guess maybe more so history of suicidal ideation? Because I know with the EHR that I use at the other company that I work for, there's like this section that says history, present, not present. Um, for you and how we do notes with you, well, how would you like to indicate that?
Okay, yes, great question. Again, in the intake paperwork, there is a history of suicide or suicidal behavior on all of the forms that everybody fills in. Have you ever had a history? Do you currently have suicidal thoughts or no? This is a little nuanced and a little tricky because a lot of people might not want to put that down in writing in an intake form as they're coming in. So you're going to conduct this assessment. Are you going to do this with every single client that you have? No, you are not. Okay? We are not we're not just doing this because we're going to operate from a very fear-based perspective that we need to completely assure that we're not going to get, in trouble. We're going to do this with clinically significant cases where we're going to go into these territories when it is clinically significant, right? Like this is not something we're just going to be triggering. But of course, if anything comes up that is remotely suicidal ideation, uh, or homicidal ideation, we want to be curious about this to understand it. And part of that is going to be the history. Like, has this happened before? How long has it been happening for? Is this the first time in your life that you've been dealing with this? And you might discover some more things. Now, of course, if it should have been in the intake, hopefully the client, was transparent. Um, And particularly for those clients that are coming in really, really overwhelmed, really depressed, despondent, like you see some of the major depressive disorder um, eh, symptoms, or they're in significant distress, it never hurts at all to ask, is it so bad that you're thinking you're in danger? You know? And we're just, okay, no, fine. Then we can just focus on this thing. But if it is, right, like if you smell a scent that this might be in there clinically presenting right now, we're gonna ask. And then when you ask, and if it's there, uh, then we're gonna look at the history. So yeah, it's a little bit of uh clinical judgment question. Uh, but I hope this is being clear. Does this answer your question, Sinanala, or no? Yeah. Any questions about this, you all? We're not going to see the suicide prevention plan right now. We're going to go into this next week. I'm going to send it to you anyways on the email with the document so you can start looking at it. Go ahead, Sinima.
I actually wanted to share something with you guys as well. So I will not be able to make it to next week's revision because I'm going to be out of town, but I know that you have your own safety plan, but I just kind of wanted to share if anybody else wanted to add to this. I know that when I've done suicidal ideation safety plans and all that stuff before, a common thing that I would hear from my clients is like, oh, I haven't looked at it, or like I forgot where I put it, whatever. I have this link. If you'd like, I can send it to you, Quan, and you can like pass it around to everybody else.
Please.
But it basically is a safety plan that gets automatically sent to their phone so that it's like always like easily accessible. So if you'd like, I can pass that to you, and if that kind of aligns with how you like
Yeah,
to do your safety plans, but that's something that I've been found to be very helpful for my clients, and I'd love to give everybody that tool if that works.
that sounds like a great resource. Please share it with me. One thing that comes to mind in the suicide safety plans that we have, of course, you're completing it with the client in the session, and you're attaching that into your clinical notes. And then you could ask them, for permission, of course, to share this with a couple of their most trusted contacts that they have a safety plan. Um, I'm gonna look into the links in another. That sounds amazing. Unfortunately, I want to understand the HIPAA compliance aspect of this, and that
Mhm.
clients might, right, like be concerned about having either this information be online, be on a link that somebody could hijack, anything like that, right? Like that
Yeah.
could potentially be compromised in some such sensitive information.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that's a great great point.
Yeah,
Would love to see it, please.
sure, absolutely. Yeah, you do it kind of like you said, like with the client, and then you can like email it or text it, but yeah, I'll send it your way.
Excellent, excellent. I mean, yeah, it's that's the idea, is that there's a paper trail of it, and that's a good point, Sunil, is that like you do it in session, but then they also have a copy of it. So, that's a um, beautiful way of driving that home. Okay, so that's it for now. I'm sure there's a lot of questions that remain. We are gonna address this in part two next week, okay? If anybody has anyone right now who you have in your caseload that is that is high risk, right? The red little boxes at the end, that is high risk, that has a plan, that has intent, all that stuff, and you haven't let me know. Please reach out to me and let me know so we can discuss this. Okay, either in supervision with your supervisors and stuff like that. If you need assistance or help with anything like this, let me know and I'm available to discuss. Okay. I appreciate you all. Thank you for making the time today. I will see you in a week. Great questions, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.